Aikido is a martial way who come from the warrior traditions of Japan. So if you talk about warrior tradition, this is with a weapon. You don't go on a battlefield empty-handed. So there are studies now about the how people would die on a battlefield. So main cause of death in Japan was being killed by an arrow or bullet, and then a spear, and maybe after a sword, and then rocks. Where you lose your weapon, you take whatever you have to do some damage. So it's empty-handed is really, 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 really the last resort. When they would be empty-handed, they would use their reflex and their thinking. And at first, this school were called jujutsu. Okay, and this jujutsu evolved in many different schools. They have been different names, but and on the 20th century, there were a lot of development and emphasis on the empty hand side. Aikido was born. The name was actually born in 1942, but the founder, who was born in 1886, so he was contemporary of the last samurais, and he built Aikido. One specificity of Aikido is the etiquette. The idea that just finishing your opponent is something you want to avoid. So first, you want to avoid conflict, and if there is a conflict, the idea is to bring back harmony that you always have to work on. So to be so skilled so that you can control the attacks and ultimately the opponent with as little damage as possible. This is the ideal. You have tools so that if you have to apply it, it is brutal, but that is really, really the last resort. So this is a specificity. It's in some other school, but the founder of Aikido is really well known for this, and it's sometimes called the art of peace. Aikido is sometimes called the art of peace.
This episode of Outliers, I'm speaking with Leo Tamaki. Leo has an incredible career story to share. He's an instructor at Aikido gyms in Paris and has traveled and taught Aikido across the world. It was great talking to him to learn his own career journeys and insights into his views of the martial arts. If you're into history or the history of fighting, I really think you're going to enjoy this podcast, so let's get into it. What is it you love so much about teaching and travel that gets you to do, what'd you say, 80 trips a year?
So I'm traveling 220 days a year, and I'm taking the plane about 80 times a year. So moving on five continents every year, about 15 countries. There are many things that I like about it. First of all, my father is Japanese, my mother is half French, half Croatian, and my father is a painter. And my first memories, as I was 2 years old, was a trip in Italy when we were going from museums to museums. So very early, I have these memories. And first time I took the plane alone, I was 4. Going in Croatia at 8, I went from France to Japan alone at the time where it was quite a long trip. And it was always a very inspiring environment, because my father's artist friends would come and so on, and very international. And by going in many different countries like this, traveling, it's the same pleasure of making new acquaintance, seeing the world from a different point of view. Like, for example, I have when I talk with some people who live in Western Europe and don't travel further than Western Europe, I see that the view of the world is uniformed and quite limited. And but when I go to Eastern Europe, when I go to South Asia, when I go to Central America, then North Africa, people have a very different way of thinking and living. And it's it's like when you see something, you're used to see it from one point of view, but somebody see it from here and he share his insight. You know, when you see it from there, it's a very different point of view. So this is the pleasure. And then there is also the fact, of course, that second time, and I think that's really true, because you can develop a certain skill, know-how, but when you have to help a student develop it, then you will face some other difficulties, because something came easy to you, some came with difficulties, but the student will have different talent, and he will have to overcome some other problems. So you have to think about it. And here again, it gives you another point of view. So that's always teaching, traveling, meeting people, give you a richer perception of things, I think.
Did having parents from two different ends of the world allow you to fluidly enter different cultures? Do you think that childhood helped prepare you to travel so much?
Yeah, I really think so because I really time not moving and staying still, uh, and at the same time, I see people who have a hard time traveling. Taking the plane is a pain, and all the new things. I think we are in many ways. We are the result of our environment, and so growing up with so many different takes on life, trying so many different foods, never owning anything. So, give me a sort of freedom. And my father is an artist, so you have no regular income. You have everything, like you don't know what tomorrow will be made of. And this is something I enjoyed. But would I have my life, working on the field, and you know what tomorrow will be made of, and you can guess what will be your life in 3 months, in 6 months, in a year. And I see how it would be very unpleasant to live the life of my father, or the one that I'm living now, because at the same time, I travel, and I'm happy to be successful enough now. But you give 2, 3 bad seminars, somebody is not invite you so anymore, and so on, and the same. So martial artist is in a way, as far as income goes, as difficult as being a painter or an actor, a comedian, or anything. You are only as good as your last gig, your last seminar.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. I've heard you talk about that before, and you distinguish it almost between a blue collar
Oh
and
yeah.
a white collar. Could you explain that?
So at first I didn't know, there was a difference. Like for me, a martial artist is a martial artist, and that was all. But same for a cook, and there is no value judgment at all in this. But you can be a cook, and you have your small shop somewhere, and you're doing a same dish, and this is a specialty. You're doing pizza. You only ever did pizza. Your boss, your father, did pizza maybe, and you teach your son to do pizza, and that's what you enjoy, and that's great, because you it's like a painter. Okay, you can develop like this, like Monet, the impressionist, would do kind of always the same picture, different of course, but always same, and you can develop and enjoy very much. And at the same time, you have the chef who have different restaurants, 2 or 3 star Michelin restaurant here, restaurant there, Wolfgang Puck or Alain Ducasse, or so on, and they have to renew and to conceptualize and think of new things. So this is the white collar. And in Aikido, so it's the same. You can have your dojo and being there 7/7. You have class 6 or 7 days a week. You have maybe 20 class a week. It's always the same pattern, and that's perfectly good. You can, if you enjoy, anything is good as long as you enjoy it. On the other hand, you can be an international expert. You move from place to place, and you have to at the same time transmit the essence. So the same thing, but you have to give it a twist. So people keep being interested and paying good money, traveling to come and see you. Because even if I travel so much, I mean, I only go like in 60 different places a year, and so a lot of people have to come to this place, so they have to do an effort, and you have to bring some value. And yeah, so this is more the white collar, and you make better money by the hour, I would say. Maybe not at the total, because you're giving the seminar on the weekend, and during the week you don't give a seminar. So, but better hourly rate. It gives you more time to train, think, conceptualize. I think I would say, I'm quite sure in climbing it's the same. So you would have the guy who is living in some mountain station, and he's giving classes, and so he's bringing tourists on the same path and he's teaching on the same place, and he can be perfectly happy with this. And on the other hand, you have the famous climber who would go from place to place and maybe they write books, they are on magazines and TVs, and it's a different life, different pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I thought the distinction was really interesting in terms of like looking at it from a business lens. Definitely was an interesting take. Could you tell me a brief overview of like the history of Aikido and what separates it from other martial arts?
Of course. So Aikido is a martial way who come from the warrior traditions of Japan. So the traditions evolve. So it's the dawn of time, and in Japan. So if you talk about warrior tradition, this is with a weapon. You don't go on a battlefield empty-handed. So there are studies now about the how people would die on a battlefield. So main cause of death in Japan was being killed by an arrow or bullet, and then a spear, and maybe after a sword, and then rocks. Where you lose your weapon, you take whatever you have to do some damage. So it's empty-handed is really, 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 really the last resort. I mean, it's like Navy SEALs. However, how many turns they do, it is very unlikely that they ever had to kill somebody empty-handed. Very unlikely. I don't say it never happened, but so basically, the warrior tradition is with a sword, and they would, when they would be empty-handed, they would use their reflex and their thinking. And at first, this school were called jujutsu. Okay, and this jujutsu evolved in different schools. They have been different names, but and on the 20th century, there were a lot of development and emphasis on the empty hand side. So Aikido was born. The name was actually born in 1942, but the founder, who was born in 1886, so he was contemporary of the last samurais. So he studied in different schools, jujutsu school, sword schools, and he built Aikido. One specificity of Aikido is the ethic. The idea that just finishing your opponent is something you want to avoid. So first you want to avoid conflict, and if there is a conflict, the idea is to bring back harmony that you always have to work on. So to be so skilled so that you can control the attacks and ultimately the opponent with as little damage as possible. This is the ideal. Actually, when you really apply it, it's much more. It looks much more like a Steven Seagal movie. So breaking joints and stuff. So you have tools so that if you have to apply it, it is brutal. But that is really the last resort. So this is a specificity. It's in some other school, but the founder of Aikido is really well known for this, and it's sometimes called the art of peace. Aikido is sometimes called the art of peace.
Yeah, it's an interesting juxtaposition, like learning peace and tranquility through martial prowess. It's an interesting take.
You know what? Word, but as I told you, I met a few of them, and the calmer they are and more skill means they have more experience, but also they face danger more. And I think martial arts is the same. The more you face danger and the more you get calmer. So there is a Japanese word that is called Heijo Shin. Shin is a heart, spirit, and Heijo means constant calmness, constant calmness of the spirit and the mind. So you should be, one image that is often used is being like a lake reflecting the moon. So it's perfectly still. If the lake is moving, so the reflection is not clear. So you very calm, because the more danger you have, the less you want your spirit to be moving around and you being you panicking. And that is why although Zen and some other Do paths have shown results, of course, but I think that physical activities that involve moving a changing environment and the real element of danger is something that prepares us better to face the uncertainty, the stressful events of life. Because what is stressful very often is something that you don't expect. And I'm sure when you climb, okay, there is the path that you really know, but the more different paths you go on, so you don't know, you have to adapt to the paths are changing, and you go in winter or summer. I am sure it's different. I'm sure the feeling of the rock is different. Did you train the day before, or was it very sunny? I'm sure the rock again is different. So here again, the environment change, and you have to stay calm and develop your perception and everything. And in this way, martial art can bring you this, because you try to be calm, but not, in your hole sitting and doing zazen, but with somebody trying to cut you in half or punch you in the face, and it brings something interesting, I think.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Climbing definitely has that parallel where it's an incredibly focusing activity. And on the other hand, too, when you talk about having the right mindset, I remember during some wrestling matches in high school, if you came in too energized, maybe energized is the wrong word, too with like too much testosterone and bravado, and just tried to beat up someone, like anyone who had good technique would just toss you around.
Yeah.
There was no chance that energy and enthusiasm could beat good discipline and that tranquility you said. Someone's like, "Oh, I've seen this before. I know what to do." That experience and technique is going to beat you every time.
Well, that's always the young lion, and in fighting sports, especially, you really see it. It can give you results, but I think they are very short term, meaning that you back on your physical prowess, and if you're genetically favored human, okay, that's good for a time. But when you reach 30, if you're in the professional world, you have people who have better physical abilities, and then you have to change. And that's, you can see it in boxing. Like if you see George Foreman in his prime, and when he took back his title or 40 or something, see that it's the old lion. He does minimal move, and the guy that he's facing are moving much more faster, have more energy, but he took back the title. Or even if you see Roger Federer or so on, when he was 20, end of his career, he would win in different way. Or Rafael Nadal, exceptional physique, but at the end, it's like very different thing. That so the champion that you see just for a time when they are between 20, 23, that usually are people who didn't develop this mindset, I think.
Could you tell me about your own relationship with that mindset? It sounds like you had that young lion yourself when you were in your 20s discovering Aikido.
At first, I did other martial arts. So I started with judo, I did karate, kickboxing, and so on. Very superficial. When I was 20 or something, it was to be the strongest in the world. Like when I look at it, I think of it now when I'm 50. Like, how could I ever think like this? But at the same time, it goes with the hormone, the testosterone, everything at this time. And it was not a deep motivation, but this superficial motivation brought me to train more and more and more. Whatever I would do, whatever exercise, would it be kind of just taking rolling, which in Aikido is quite important, or being at the gym and doing more pull-ups or whatever. I always was imagining some opponent enemy, and I had a lineup of people that I knew that were stronger than me, and I knew some were a little bit stronger and more and more. And so the first 100 or the first 10 reps or whatever, I had one, and if I could do this, I could beat this one and this one and this one. And so I definitely had this aggressive, competitive mindset. And the number of hours of practice gave me confidence, and with confidence and skills, you start, well, first of all, you start to see that there are so many good and dangerous people that it puts things in perspective. If you don't train alone in your gym, and I went to Japan to meet with the people that I thought were the best, and I met very good and strong people. And when you are, because this willing to beat other people is born out of fear, I think. And the more skill you develop, and naturally you become calmer. I mean, did any training to get rid of this competitive mindset, or I started meditation when I already have passed this will to be number one. Everything just practicing long enough. But I think that you also see it in if I see the tennis player who stay for long, how many tennis players of 35 or 40 years old are go on the court angry? No, anger doesn't help.
Yeah,
Did everything they could. I think just practicing is enough, because when you're not ready, I mean, I read all the books, the Wise Guys book and the Big Master books, and they say it, but I could read it, but it passed my mind. I mean, that is just all men talk. How can I beat the shit out of the guy? All this. So I think everybody can tell you this, but you have to realize this and realize it when you have it. And so that's why I try not to talk too much to young students or people where I see this. If they become a danger for others or themselves, I try to calm them down. But because I know I passed through this, and if they continue, it will also pass, I'm sure.
Yeah, what a great perspective to have as a coach. And you see so many ranges of students in different parts of their life.
Yeah. What is good with Aikido is that you have people. Well, I don't give kids class now, but I used in the past. But now I think my younger students are teenager, and the older are 70 and more. And some students I know for 20 years or so. So I see we evolved all together. So, and usually, I try to say minimum. I really like that actions, the change, the progression comes from them. So I try not to push them, not to motivate them. I try to be an example so that they can see that making the effort is at the end present, give results, and be constant. And I think it works better. And because you can say to somebody, do this or do that, and they would do it. But when you're not there anymore, they may stop, and it's not really from inside. So it's fragile. So, for example, new students who arrive on the dojo, I don't teach them how to bow. I don't teach them the etiquette. Some teacher like to be very clear about this. When you enter, you have to teach. That's good. But I like to instill in them the necessity to observe and to be proactive. So they enter, they come, they buy their gi somewhere, and maybe the first time they just enter like this, but they would see me, the other student, do differently, and they would feel, why are they doing this? It will make them think. It's not just being awkward, that they will be looking for a reason, and they will change. So some people from the first class, they change. Some it takes a few more time, but that's always, and sometimes I get frustrated. But again, I think it's more efficient to do things like that.
For etiquette, what do you mean by etiquette in the dojo?
The etiquette, well, the way you bow when you enter, the way you interact with people, the way
Yes.
the way you do everything. The more dangerous the environment, the proper etiquette you should have. But I'm sure I never did skydiving, but I'm sure there is a kind of ritual etiquette,
Yes.
to fold the parachute and everything. I'm sure for you when you go climbing, it's not like you go to the gym and you hope that you take your water and your gloves. No, because
Yes.
if you forgot something, or if your equipment is not in a good state, your life is at stake. So I'm sure your ritual when you prepare yourself to go climbing is very precise, and this is
Yeah.
etiquette. And so in the dojo it's the same. So if you don't bow at a certain distance, if you move around with swinging your weapons, you're dangerous for other and for yourself. And so if we were doing skydiving, I would tell you how to fold your parachute. But in the dojo, because it's a relatively safe environment, and so I prefer them to discover what they have to do. So it's already the first lesson that you teach yourself, learn by observing, because I can spoon feed them, but then it's endless.
Aikido you described as a proficiency in hands-free, or just your hands, but it looks like a lot of your classes you're working with swords as well. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, so the founder of Aikido would use sword to emphasize principle and so on, but he wouldn't teach it very often. I, in Japan, learned some old sword tradition dating more than 500 years. And we developed some part of Aikido that were there, and we emphasize the use of weapon. Many benefits to this. First thing is that you may not be able if you had an accident or when you reach a certain age to do so many rolls, as I told before. When you're 60, 70, your knees, your back is not in the state it was when you were 20. So if you train correctly, you can still roll, but not as much. So then if you want to practice the same amount of time, then you have to devote a part of the training to less physically demanding practice. So the sword or the staff, the jaw or the knife is an alternative. Also, with the body, when I take it with the hands, you have so many joints that you can use to compensate something. With a sword, it's very clear lines. So you learn very precisely, and it's much more easy to see what you have to do than with empty hand technique. So much is happening, like. And there is a notion of danger. If you take a hit with the hand, it's unpleasant. But if it's a sword, even if it's only a wooden sword and not a steel one, it's more unpleasant. Finally, that there is the fact that it brings you and it links you to a different era, and it's the same reason for which we kept the traditional outfit. The Japanese skirt. We wouldn't have the same posture, the same mindset if we were in short and t-shirts. Putting the gi, the belt, the hakama, and it brings you back. You're training a tradition, something that was built by people who put their life at stake, and give you more consideration, respect for what you are doing. And the sword is, of course, a very symbolic link to the traditions of the samurai. So you can be good at Aikido without doing weapons, but I think you're missing some accelerator.
Yeah. Could you talk about what it means to forget yourself when you're using the sword?
Yeah. Go from doing things consciously to doing them unconsciously. So at first you come to the dojo, you don't know what you have to do, so you're very conscious. So just bowing is this, but also doing the technique. Or what did she do with his arm? Oh, I have to do this with my arm. I have that. And then you do it so that this becomes natural to you. But then you want to improve, then you have to go back to do things consciously. When I'm doing this, it works, but how can I make it work more? Do I have some tension in my body? Am I tensing some parts of my body that are actually slowing me down or giving insight to my opponent? So I have to work on it very consciously. And again, so much so that this different body mechanics, this way of doing my move more precisely, become a second nature. And again, next step, I have to go and do it unconsciously and consciously. And of course, when you are in a life or death situation, if you're climbing or so on, and it's not life or death, but would you be in a life or death situation with a sword? But even if you're just in an opening situation, in open situation where less rules and you just fight with somebody, time to think. You can have a strategy at first, but it goes so fast. It's not the time of thinking. What will come out is what you have been practicing and training, and it's like you're when I'm sparring, let's say, myself in two, and one part of me is there, up there, looking at this, and giving, observing and giving general direction, and the other part is with the emotion, this or, and then at the end, these two parts regroup, and you can see what you did good, what you did wrong. But in the moment, the one observing don't have the time to give detailed thing. It's not like, oh, here you should do like this, and the time you think about it, boom, you already hit in the head. I probably I'm sure that in any intense situation, emergency situation, the same. So we'll probably for climbing, if you had a difficult moment where you had to react quickly, time to think about it, but it's all the time that you put in the past to think about it that give results and put you out of danger.
Definitely, yeah. Once you get it in the muscle memory, I guess, yeah, that would be incredibly helpful. Could you, I'd love to talk to you about, you're in such good shape. You're like insanely built. What's your workout routine look like?
I'm in a good shape, okay.
You're being very humble.
No. It's like if I compare to most of the people that I meet in the street every day, okay, I'm in good shape. If I compare myself to when I was in top shape at 25, I can't even do half of what I was doing. Can't even do half. So I'm a sucker for pull-ups, chin-ups, and everything.
Yeah.
So
how many could you do when you were 25?
So in one training session, I would do 800.
800?
And the max I would do in one set, not very clean, but not this kind of movement. But I would say 80% good was 65. Yeah, and my body fat was under 5%. So
you were just muscle.
I could run 9 kilometers in 30 minutes. So it was what the women from the Australia Olympic team had to do to be qualified. So I was in very good shape. And then in a few years, I could do 400, and if I go 200, that's good. If I can do a set of 25, I'm happy. So I'm good shape, but training, but. I'm 50 now, and that's something I have to face. So what is my training? First of all, I have to say that for a different reason than most of the people, I don't train very cleverly in the sense that I would periodize my training much better if I had some goal of lifting some, reaching some PR or something like that. I train my mind when I go to the gym. I go to sort out my frustration because, like everyone, I got frustrated, and so I can push the bar. And also, I train intensely. I don't do very much of deload. I don't do a lot of periodization. So I'm training at level of intensity is too much, and sometimes I go to overtraining actually. But this gives me the confidence that I did more than the other, and it's more strengthening my mind and giving me confidence about this. So in this sense, I wouldn't advise to do what I do. So if I go in some details, I try to do some cardio every time. So when I do it, when I don't have time or I'm tired, I would do like 10 minutes. When I'm in good shape, I would do 1 hour and a half, sometimes a bit more. And the intensity also. I like to do like 30 minutes of the Stairmaster at the maximum speed.
Wow.
Bucket of water, and then I do about 20 minutes of mobility exercise just to keep the range of motion. And then I go to the gym. I would lift weight for 40 to 60 minutes. And usually I do, I would say like 70% of barbell and dumbbell, 60, 70, and 25% of body weight, and 5%, 10% of cable or machine. But that's just my personal taste. Once again, it's not that it's the best for the training or so on. And when I want to be very thorough and train intelligently, I follow programs like X from Jeff Cavalier. I think he does things that are really great.
Yeah.
And actually, I can see better result. I'm less exhausted. But sometimes I'm frustrated. You know, I was born in the 70s and I grew up in the 80s. No pain, no gain. I know this is stupid. You know, that's the world in which I grew up. In Instagram, I follow The Rock or Stallone, and this guy also, you know, I probably did overdo it a bit, but it worked for me somehow. And it's a routine, and so I train like this, like 5 days a week at the minimum. But usually I try to do 7. There's 1 or 2 days where I do very, very quick workout, only maybe 10 minutes of cardio and a bit of yoga. But even when I'm traveling, I try to make it one of my objective to have hotels with gyms. But because you're in the States, it seems obvious that you go in a usual hotel, good hotel, you would have a gym. But in Europe, it's really not the norm, not at all. Yeah, and European people don't have the same relationship to the body and activity, especially the French. So that is why very often we don't have the same results than the States can have, or Judeo-Christian mentality, you know, and the body is bad, and you know, work on your mind and so on. And Protestant, I think, had a more healthy relationship with the body, and that is why I think in Canada, in the US, when I go there, it's very easy to find hotel with good gym, very, very easy, and also it's easy, and there are in the normal hours there are people. I try to go when there is nobody, but if you go from 6 a.m., there are already people usually there. In France, very often you don't have the gym. And if you go to the gym at 6 a.m., you're guaranteed to be alone. Guaranteed.
Interesting. I hadn't realized that. I was in Paris 2 years ago and loved it. But yeah, now that you're pointing it out, I guess there weren't really any commercial gyms. Just no 24-hour fitness like in America.
I would say it's starting now, but yeah, and so it's starting now, and I think it would be different for the new generation, because the Instagram generation and so on. But people from my age and above, it's really not natural. I mean,
yeah. Speaking of France, so you go to Japan to work and train, and then you come back to Paris in what, 2009 or 2007, and you start a dojo and you have 5 students, and then you grow it. Is that right?
Yeah, so I came, the first thing I went to Japan from 98 to 2001. I spent 3 years there, and one of my teachers said, "Oh, Leo, we have a dojo in Paris. One of your senpai, your senior, is leaving, and she's leaving the dojo. Would you like to come back?" Oh, perfect, because I was going in Japan to train. At this time, I reached middle level, and I thought, good opportunity. And I came back, and it was in the far suburb, you know, like about 1 hour from Paris. And there were only 13 students, 4 adults and 9 kids. And like, wow, I came back from Japan for this, you know, like, but at the end of the first year, we had 50 students. In 5 years, we had 150 students. So it went well. And in 2007, I went back to Japan for 3 years. I was divorcing my first wife, Japanese wife. I went back to Japan to try to patch things up. It didn't go well, but gave me I discovered some new interesting teacher. So I decided to stay there for a few years. And I came back, and when I came back again, start from scratch, because my previous dojo, I asked my brother to take care of it. And of course, I wanted him to keep it because he did such a good job. And after 3 years, some of the students went away, and new student came, and it was his place, and he's still there, and so it's very good. But I had to start from scratch, from the suburb, and so on. And now I'm in the center of Paris.
Yeah, it's such an impressive story to me. So you're able to scale it like that.
I was lucky. I mean, maybe it's Al Pacino, the actor. I also hear Michael Bublé say it and some other. But I mean, you have to work your ass off. You have to be ready. just the beginning, just the base. I mean, people who are ready and who work their ass off, there are many, 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 many. And then some have a chance. So some didn't work their ass off, change came, and they failed. But there are people who never really get the chance, even if they work their ass off. So I really work my ass off. I keep working a lot, but I know that I've been lucky in many aspects. I've been lucky thanks to my face. I mean, but usually, my hair like this. If I use DALI from ChatGPT and I ask, draw a samurai in Paris, boom. And the drawing that comes out kind of looks like me.
Perfect.
It's I very often use some of them for my stories or so, stuff like that. So, and some people say, "Oh, you look like Keanu Reeves, or you look like Hiroyuki Sanada from Shogun," or so. In Japan, some people also tell this. So I have a face that reminds people of something that is related to martial art. Would I have been a white guy, blue eyes, and blonde hair, I would have less success. I'm very not exuberant, but I have no problem contacting with people, because since I was a kid, there were a lot of strangers coming into my home from different places. I'm not shy. I'm very comfortable with new people, new situation. Without I've grown up in the far country, not meeting people and being always shy, I wouldn't have the success that I have. It would have been difficult for me to take decision and to impose them on the group. Now we are about 1,000 around the world, and there's time you have to, put your hand on and say, we'll do it like this. I'm comfortable with my image. I can share things on Instagram. I have people in my school whose level whose skills are very close to mine. Of the success, because they don't like to communicate. They don't like to make stories. They don't like to put a picture of themselves. So that is, I started to be invited to give seminars. So to go from blue collar to white collar, because I wrote a lot. I had a blog in French about martial art. There were 2,000 daily unique visitors. So it was the #1 blog about martial arts, because my mother liked to read so much. My father also. I read since I was a kid, and I liked to write and write and write. And there was, I don't know if, how old are you?
28.
I'm not sure you remember, but at the beginning of the 2000, the blog was such a big thing. Now, nobody blogs now, and so many people would come and read my blog because I like to write. Somebody who didn't like to write, I would still be a blue collar if I didn't like to write. So
Interesting.
The fact I like to write, the fact that my parents has so many guests from different country, age, all of this. The fact that I could use it to show and share my practice. If I had none of this, I could have the same level, and I would have a tenth of the audience that I have now. But behind every big success, you have a fair share of luck.
It's such an American-centric point of view I have, but when I read about your life story and how you're able to scale 5 students to, like you said, speaking tours around the world, it felt like the American dream to me, in the sense of like you're leveraging all the cards you've been dealt in your life, be it your childhood or your appearance, like you talk about, your social skill sets, and then you're just going to work your tail off until you can make a career out of it.
Well, so I grew up between French and Japanese culture.
Yeah.
And the French culture is the more individualistic that I know of. I mean, I've been around the world, and it is more individualistic, more Gregorian culture that I know, more than any other Asian countries. So it's both ends of the scope. But what I really like, what impresses me a lot about US is the fact that American people can use both cards.
Yeah.
When they need, they're Team America. So everybody goes together and joins strengths. That's why you're good at team sport. But when need, it's like, fuck off, get out of my face, and for me. And so it just, don't leave any card unturned, and be able to adapt to the situation what is needed. And yeah, I think that's a very pragmatic way of seeing things, and something that I respect. I take only a few days of holiday, like 5 days a year or something, and it's usually in the US, in New York, because I like this get go mentality, the ability to team, but to be individualistic and a team player, to go from one to the other. It's adaptation and very down to earth. I like it very much.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, will you humor me for some speed round questions to close up?
Oh, with pleasure.
Do you drink tea or coffee?
Coffee. Actually, drinking coffee here. So you see from
Oh, your New York mug.
and what I like is this.
Oh, perfect.
Check it, Carnegie Hall. Practice, practice, practice. You will see the story. It's good.
Yeah, I love it. Hey, is there a distinction in your head between training and practice?
There is a difference between workout and practice.
Yeah.
Okay, so practice is more deliberate, more conscious. Workout, we could say training is, you repeat something, but you can do it with less presence.
Yeah.
And it's once again doing things consciously and unconsciously. So
Yep.
it's good to have both. Focusing takes a lot of energy doing things consciously. So if you only do things consciously, you're limited in the amount of things you can do. So it's important also that you sometimes just go through the moves without thinking too much about it. You try to do it correctly, but okay. And other time, you really do it very consciously, slowly, deliberately. So I think both are important.
Is there a book you think everyone should read?
A book everyone should read. There's no one book that comes to my mind, but reading is so important. There was a time in my life, a very happy time, when I would read one book a day. Yeah, I was 18. I was living in a Canarian island, and I was selling necklace on the streets. And with 2 hours a day was enough for me to make a very good living, and I passed the rest of the time reading and training. And even when I was selling necklace, I was reading books, so I could read one book a day. No, I think there is two different kind of books, and I use a lot of book with many information. I just received a book that I think would be very interesting, Outlive by Peter Attia. So I like the kind of books with very precise data and so on like this. And there are books that inspire you with deep things. It's not about data, but of course, my master wrote a few books, and one that I like very much is called Etiquette and Transmission. And it's very basic, but very deep, and I like to read it again and again. And one other book that I like very much is called Miyamoto Musashi. So it's the romanced version of the most famous samurai of Japan, who did more than 60 duels, sometimes against tens of opponents at the same time. And there are very many liberties with reality, not just because we don't have. It was in the 1600s, so what arrived to us leaves a lot of gap. But it's very inspiring. It's very well written. It's the most sold book in Japan. A few years ago, it was like it sold 130 millions. I don't know how many today, but it was written in the 30s, and it's very good book for me.
Oh, I'd enjoy that. I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah, Miyamoto Musashi. The English translation is very good. Yeah.
The last question is what's the best way for people to support you or follow you?
Oh, well, they can come on Instagram. I try to share stuff. Now, I share much more of pictures and little stories. I like to write, but unfortunately, now when I write on my blog, 200 people go to read it. I know that now we're a different era, so I write for a magazine, but I like to stay there and in contact with people. I respond to everybody writing or messaging in any ways. So that's how I try to have a little nudge in the world for Aikido. And
yeah. Well, thank you for the content and thank you for the time. I
yes, thank you. I really
enjoy
enjoyed
your mentality.
Our discussion, and because I really think that I told you when I started Aikido, one of my teachers told me that climber as a real samurai, and I never forgot it.
That's great. I love that. Well, thanks so much, Mr. Tamaki.
Thank you.
Thanks so much to Leo Tamaki for joining me on the conversation, and thank you for listening. Be sure to hit all the buttons, like, follow, subscribe, so you stay tuned for the next episode.